Hello guys, how are you? Hoping you are good. Welcome back to this YouTube channel, Artificial and Fact. Today, we want to talk about externalities. Without any further ado, let's just get into it. Before we jump to the materials, I have one question for you. You have 3 minutes to think. You can answer on the chat box. The question is, in your opinion, what is externalities and what can cause externalities? An externality arises when a person engages in an activity that influences the well-being of a bystander, and yet neither pays nor receives any compensation for that effect. If the impact of the bystander is adverse, it is called a negative externality. If it is beneficial, it is called a positive externality. Externalities come in many varieties, as do the policy responses that try to deal with the market failure. Here are some examples. The first is, the exhaust from automobile is a negative externality because it creates smoke that other people have to breathe. As a result of this externality, drivers tend to pollute too much. The second is, resort historic buildings convey a positive externality because people who walk or ride by them can enjoy the beauty and the sense of history that these buildings provide. Buildings owners do not get the full benefit of restoration and therefore tend to discard older buildings too quickly. The third is barking dogs create a negative externality. Because neighbors are disturbed by the noise, Dog owners do not bear the full cost of the noise and therefore tend to take too few precautions to prevent their dogs from barking. And the last one is research into new technologies provides a positive externality because it creates knowledge that other people can use. Because inventors cannot capture the full benefit of their invention, they tend to devote too few resources. Okay, we go to the second question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is externalities come in many varieties. Mention the one that has been explained. The time will start in 3, 2, 1. Welfare economics, a recap. In the absence of government intervention, the price adjusts to balance the supply and demand for aluminum. The quantity produced and consumed in the market equilibrium, shown as a Q market in Figure 1, is efficient in the sense that it maximizes the sum of producer and consumer surplus. Okay, here's the next question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, how does this externality affect the efficiency of the market outcome? The time will start in 3, 2, 1. Because of the externality, the cost to society of producing aluminum is larger than the cost to the aluminum producer. The planner understands, however, that the cost of producing aluminum includes the external cost of the pollution. The planner will choose the level of aluminum production at which the demand curve crosses the social cost curve. This intersection determines the optimal amount of aluminum from the standpoint of society as a whole. Okay guys, we go to the next question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, what do you know about positive externalities? The time will start in 3. Positive externalities. The consumer of education becomes a more productive workers and thus reaps much of the benefit in the form of higher wages. Beyond these private benefits, however, education also yields positive externalities. One externality is that a more educated population leads to more informed voters, which means better government for everyone.
A potentially important type of positive externality is called a technology spillover. The impact of one firm's research and production effort on other firms' access to technological advance. How large are technology spillover and what do they imply for public policy? This is an important question because technological progress is the key to why living standards rise over time. Yet it is also a difficult question on which economists often disagree. Some economists believe that technology spillover are pervasive and that the government should encourage those industries that yield the largest spillovers. For instance, these economists argue that if making computer chips yields greater spillovers than making potato chips, then the government should encourage the production of computer chips relative to the production of potato chips. The US tax code does this in a limited way by offering special tax breaks for expenditures on research and development. Some other nations go further by subsidizing specific industries that supposedly offer large technology spillovers. Government intervention in this economy that aims to promote technology and changing industry is sometimes called industry policy. Other economists are skeptical about industrial policy. Even if technology spillovers are common, the success of an industrial policy requires that the government be able to measure the size of the spillovers from the different markets. This measurement problem is difficult at best. Moreover, without prices measurements, the political system may end up subsidizing industries with the most political clout rather than those that yield the largest positive externalities.
Here's the next question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, the types potentially important positive externalities are. The time will start in 3, 2, 1. The government can correct the market failure by inducing market participants to internalize the externality. The appropriate response in the case of positive externalities is exactly the opposite to the case of negative externalities. To move the market equilibrium closer to the social optimum, a positive externality requires a subsidy. In fact, that is exactly the policy the government follows. Education is heavily subsidized through public schools and government scholarship. Okay guys, here's the next question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, why does the government need to implement policies in dealing with externality problems? The time will start in 3, 2, 1. Public policies toward externalities. This section considers governmental solution. As a general matter, the government can respond to externalities in one of two ways. Command and control policies regulate behavior directly. Market-based policy provide incentive so that the private decision makers will choose to solve the problem on their own. The first is command and control policies, regulation. The government can remedy an externality by making certain behavior either required or forbidden. For example, it is a crime to dump poisonous chemicals into the water supply. In this case, the external cost to society far exceeds the benefits to the polluter. The government therefore institutes a command and control policy that prohibits this act altogether. Market-based policy 1. Corrective tax and subsidy. Tax enacted to deal with the effect of negative externalities are called corrective tax. They are also called Pigovian tax after economist Arthur Pigo in 1877 until 1959, an early advocate of their use. An ideal corrective tax would equal the external cost from an activity with negative externalities, and an ideal corrective subsidy would equal the external benefit from an activity with the positive externalities. Economics usually prefer corrective tax to regulation as a way to deal with pollution because they can reduce pollution at lower cost to society. Most economics prefer the tax. To explain this preference, they would first point out that a tax is just effective as a regulation in reducing the overall level of pollution. Here's the next question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, after hear the explanation, according to you, why is gasoline tax so heavily? The time will start in 3, 2, 1. Market-based policy 2. Tradable pollution permits. From the standpoint of economic efficiency, allowing the deal is a good policy, voluntarily agreeing to it. Moreover, the deal does not have any external effect because of the total amount of pollution remains the same. This social welfare is enhanced by allowing the paper mill to sell its pollution right to the steel mill. Objection to the economic analysis pollution. Economics argue that some environmental activists hurt their own cause by not thinking in economic terms. A clean environment is a good like other goods. Like all normal goods, it has a positive income elasticity. Rich countries can afford a cleaner environment than a poor ones, and therefore usually have more rigorous environmental protection. We go to the next question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, does only government can solve the externalities? Give your explanation. The time will start in 3, 2, 1. We go to the next question. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, how effective is the private market in dealing with externalities? The time will start in 3, 2, 1. The cost theorem, a famous result called the cost theorem after economic rational cost, suggests that it can be very effective in some circumstances. According to the cost theorem, if private parties can bargain over the allocation of resources at no cost, then the private market will always solve the problem of externalities and allocate resources efficiently. According to the cost theorem, the initial distribution of risk does not matter for the market's ability to reach the efficient outcome. For instance, suppose that Jen can legally compel Dick to get rid of the dog.
Why private solutions don't always work? Despite the appalling logic of the cost theorem, private individuals on their own often fail to resolve the problem caused by externalities. The cost theorem applies only when the interest parties have no trouble reaching and enforcing an agreement. In the real world, however, bargaining doesn't always work, even when a mutually beneficial agreement is possible. Sometimes, the interest parties fail to solve an externality problem because of transaction costs. The cost that parties incur in the process of agreeing to and following through on a purchase. In more realistic examples, the transaction costs are the expense not of translators but of the lawyers required to draft and enforce contracts. At other times, bargaining simply breaks down. The resurgence of wars and labor strikes shows that reaching agreement can be difficult and that failing to reach agreement can be costly. The problem is often that each party tries to hold out for a better deal. Reaching an efficient bargain is especially difficult when the number of interested parties is large because coordinating everyone is costly. For example, consider a factory that pollutes the water of a nearby lake. The pollution confers a negative externality on the local fishermen. According to the cost theorem, if the pollution is inefficient, then the factory and the fishermen could reach a bargain in which the fishermen pay the factory not to pollute. If there are many fishermen, however, trying to coordinate them all to bargain with the factory may be almost impossible. When a private bargaining doesn't work, the government can sometimes play a role. The government is an institution designed for a collective action. In this example, the government can act on behalf of the fishermen, even when it is impractical for the fishermen to act for themselves.
Okay guys, we come to the last question in this video. The rules are still same. You have 3 minutes to answer. The question is, please give a brief summary of what you think about this topic. The time will start in 3, 2, 1.
in the form of internalization and externalization, where one party provides compensation to the other party. The Cauchy theorem states that externalities don't always create a market failures, because negotiation between directly related parties can force producers to internalize externalities in the sense of taking into account the external effect of their production. Private solutions are faced with various problems such as issues of determination, disagreement, free riders, as well as transaction and negotiation costs. If the private sector is not able to overcome this problem, then the government needs to intervene. There are several solutions to overcome externalities that must be carried out by the government, namely regulation, the determination of the Pigouvian tax, and the provision of subsidies. The most appropriate solution to the problem of negative externality, such as the case of waste pollution, is regulation. Regulation is an action to control the behavior of the community either individually or in groups with rules or by means of restriction. With this regulation, the government has the right to prohibit or require which behavior are allowed and which are not allowed to be carried out by certain parties in dealing with these externalities. The government has enacted Law Number 32 of 2009 concerning environmental protection and management. Among these regulations, it is stated that every business and/or activity that has an important impact on the environment must have an AMDAL. It is also stated that the person who pollutes and/or destroys the environment is obligated to restore environmental function and is obligated to pay compensation to the party who suffers the loss. Another regulation is the Decree of the Minister of the Environment Number 51 concerning seawater quality standards. Seawater quality standard is a measure of the limit or level of living things, substances, energy of components that exist or must exist and/or pollutant element whose presence is tolerated in seawater. The stipulation of these regulations is expected to reduce the effect of negative externalities and protect the environment. It needs to be accompanied by strong supervision and cooperation from the community so that these goals can be achieved. The second example is about positive externalities. We take the example of the COVID-19 case. The positive externality of the COVID-19 pandemic is the emergence of public awareness to maintain and care for health and the start of implementing healthy and clean living behaviors. On the other hand, the implementation of the distant learning process make Indonesian people access technology system more seriously and balance them with an understanding of communication science and digital technology. Other things that can be seen are the reduced volume of waste due to large-scale social restriction implemented in various regions. Better air quality due to limited movement of motorized vehicles.
We go to the conclusion: the invisible hand is powerful but not omnipotent. A market equilibrium maximizes the sum of producer and consumer surplus. When the buyers and sellers in the market are the only interest parties, this outcome is efficient from the standpoint of society as a whole. In some cases, people can solve the problem of externalities on their own. The cost theorem suggests that the interest parties can bargain among themselves and agree on an efficient solution. When people cannot solve the problem of externalities privately, the government often steps in. Yet, even with government intervention, society should not abandon market force entirely. Okay guys, thank you for watching this video. If you like this channel, please give some likes, comments, and subscribes. See you on the next video. Goodbye.